Welcome everybody to the, I don't want to end the recording because I goofed up, but I will. 1 second. I'm assuming I can restart it, or do I have to? But I can always edit the recording. Okay, I can always edit the recording. Okay. Sorry. Welcome everybody. Welcome. You are watching and listening, I hope in the near future, to the SFF News and Interviews podcast. I'm your host, Heather Dewey Pettet, and I am an author, editor, and artist. I often say what ties all three of those things together is my love of fantasy and science fiction. So let's see. We are your source of news in our corner of publishing. This project is super important to me as I aim to support authors and other creatives by providing information on the field of publishing and related topics, as well as providing services. But we can talk about that later because we have a guest today, a wonderful guest here with me to talk to us about a really cool subject. And we're going to be talking about self-editing as it, in regards to tracking the elements of your story, and especially in a series, because that's obviously a longer work and you have to work with a lot more elements in general. So our guest, would you like to say a quick hi, and then we'll get to the next thing.
Yeah, I'm Richard Lee Byers. I've written a bunch of Forgotten Realms stuff, and a number of other IPs, and even some stuff of my own. Currently, I've written a movie called The Plague Knight, which is going to be an animated feature being produced right now by Westerfield Studios. And I have a new series which is going to be in the new Sword and Sorcery magazine, Battleborn, and I contribute to the Basil and Mobius series of books every year, and I'm supposed to do a story for a book called Reprise, which is a bunch of Forgotten Realms authors who are being brought together in an anthology now that the Forgotten Realms novels are more or less defunct, that line, but all of us who used to contribute to that line are being asked to write a fantasy story for this new book. So I'll have to get on that between now and the end of the year.
Well, I think our guest is should be quite knowledgeable about working with series, as obviously Richard's worked on many series. And but before we get to all of that, we're going to get to the news portion of the show. So sometimes we discuss indie authors who have released books, or authors who have released really cool books, even if they're traditionally published. Also, we can discuss things like craft books. And the other topic under this portion of the show is also cool markets that fall under the speculative fiction umbrella, like writing contests, calls for submissions, and similar things like that. Okay, so let's see here, for the news portion of the show. And I will be attaching relevant links to the show notes, which will go obviously towards the YouTube end in the description. So there is a brand new anthology. It is called Realm of Dreams and Starlights Anthology. So they put up a call for submissions. And this was started by the author tubers. One is called E.L. Summers. Her name is Lauren. And and then also with author Luna Nix Ross. And they have put together this brand new thing, brand new anthology to raise funds for cancer, as the author E.L. Summers recently lost her father to cancer. So that sounds like a really interesting, let's see, anthology. It says here, Realm of Dreams and Starlights is a charity anthology benefiting the American Cancer Society, and we are seeking fantasy-inspired poems and short stories that celebrate resilience, hope, healing, and transformation. Some storms arrive without warning, tearing through the life you thought you knew. Grief, loss, heartbreak, failure, and adversity leave scars that never fully disappear. Yet within those scars lies proof of survival. Every difficult chapter endured becomes a testament to resilience, courage, and growth. You are not defined by what happened to you. You are defined by the strength it took to keep moving forward. The weight you carried forged a stronger spirit, a deeper compassion, and a wisdom that can only be earned through hardship. What once threatened to break you became the very thing that revealed how unbreakable you truly are. Your story is not one of suffering. It is one of transformation. So the submission guidelines are poems and short stories are welcome. Fantasy, magical realism, and speculative fiction themes encouraged. I'm assuming using the definition of science fiction, because some people use that term for science fiction on occasion. Maximum length is 5,000 words, and the submission deadline is August 31st of this year. And you can submit to, pardon me, ourfantasyrealm@gmail.com. Okay. And then the other cool open call that I found is called Dirty Magic. That's Magick magazine. It's a monthly urban fantasy, sword and sorcery, gothic horror, meaning vampires, werewolves, ghosts. We love these genres combined with crime and mystery. We also love comedic pieces. No sci-fi or psychological horror. We lean toward more fantasy than horror. Pay us $50 a story, and word count is 2,000 to 1,250 words. You can submissions are taken at dirtymagickmagazine.com. Restricting the call to 350 subs. The daily count is posted on the website's homepage. And then they also have submission guidelines. So both of those sound interesting. And now we can get to the meat of the interview. Of the show, excuse me, and conduct our interview. Okay. Now, our guest today, Mr. Richard Lee Byers, will discuss our topic. We will talk about writing a series and tracking everything to make sure that your work is as immersive as possible. So, Mr. Richard Lee Byers, would you like to start with specifically plot, and how do you track plot elements to make sure that timelines are running correctly? Do you use a grid? Do you use spreadsheet software? Some people use this.
Yeah, I just
Sketch
kind of
sketch it with pencil.
yeah, I
Sorry.
just gotta keep it in my head, really. Yeah, it's I haven't written too many things that were that complicated. I wrote a novel called Dissolution, where at the end of the book, there's a bunch of different characters doing different things at different places. So we keep hopping back in time to pick up another character doing what he was doing. And when I wrote that, the editor didn't realize that I was jumping back in time with the different chapters from the different viewpoints. So, he kept like in putting in helpful sentences in the editing process that where characters knew things that but from their viewpoint in that chapter hadn't happened yet, and we had to go back and take all that stuff out once I explained to him what I was doing. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty good at keeping at keeping plot elements straight. I because Well, there's 2 kinds of there's more than 2 kinds, but there's, a couple kinds of series from the point of view of, are you writing an open-ended series which, the characters don't really change very much because, you couldn't just keep cranking out stories about them endlessly, if they became very different people that the readers were used to. Or there's a series finite where you have character arcs and writing to you're writing to a definite endpoint. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've done trilogies like that. There's the kind of series where you are contributing to a greater whole that other writers than you are contributing to, and other people are steering the IP besides you, and then you've got to make sure that you're kind of consistent with what everybody else is doing and where they want the overall IP to go. And so there's a lot to there can be different elements to keep track of depending on what specific thing you're doing. I've never been a big note taker or a spreadsheet user or anything like that. I probably should be. It probably would help me keep things straight at certain points, but I always just kind of try to keep things in my head and hope for the best.
So, what about things like characters? Um, so that can be a little tricky sometimes, um, in terms of, say, um, do you? Here's one thing that some authors do is they actually create a keep notes at least separate, and have like a bio kind of for complicated characters anyway that need backstory and things like that.
Well, again, I've pretty much just been for keeping things in my head. There are different things that you have to keep track of with different kind of characters. Like I was saying before, like you have the character that fundamentally doesn't change, or if he does, he changes back. Like I wrote an X-Men novel way back in the day, and you can't. I wanted to have some character arcs in there, but you can't really. You can't change the X-Men. If you can't have them
Yeah,
become a pacifist. I mean, and have it stick. You've got to
yeah.
put all the pieces back where they were originally by the end of the story. So I did that. Then there's this kind of story where there's a kind of story where you have characters who are going to go through a character arc, and reach a definite endpoint in terms of the story that you want to tell about them over multiple stories or volumes or whatever. And in that case, I think that one of the things that's important is where they're going, but you have to make sure they get there at the proper pace. Like if you're doing a trilogy, and you know that you want the particular character to end up psychologically or emotionally or whatever at a certain point at the end of book 3, we can't, get him most of the way there or virtually all the way there in book 2, and so, or you don't have anything to talk about in book 3. You've got to, like I said, I think that with that kind of series, the pacing is important.
Yes, I would definitely agree with you on that. And then, so there's plot, there's characters, settings as well. Obviously, with main storytelling elements, and without maybe going into too much more of that, but we can talk about getting to our original point is self-editing. And do you have a couple of go-to techniques that you use when you're self-editing before you send things off to your editors?
Yeah, well, the way I edit is kind of is the way that most people do not edit. The way that most people edit, at least in my experience talking to people or reading things about how to write and stuff like that. Most people will go, slam down a first draft and then go over it one or more times, refining it. And what I do is I tend to, or what pretty much I've always done is I will edit as I go. I'll go over what I wrote in the last couple days and edit that and refine that, and then I'll write the new stuff for the day. And I think there are a couple advantages to doing that way. I mean, people should do whatever works for them, obviously. There are a lot of different approaches to writing. You got to find what works for you and kind of trash what doesn't. But if you try it that way, you will find, I think that, assuming this is technique that works for you, that going over the old stuff has the advantage of reminding you what you wrote, and it gets you into the rhythm of your story and your prose again. So after you edit the old stuff, um, you'll have the flow going, and it's easier to write your new words for that day. It also can have the advantage, if you're lucky, that when you finish the first draft, you've kind of finished the book because you've edited it as you go. Now that, there's no guarantee it'll work out that way. You may do it that way and still find that, oh, I got to go through this whole thing again because I made some fundamental errors. Or there's some parts that don't satisfy me. And if that happens, that happens. But you might get lucky and then have one and say, that I finished the first draft and I've really, finished the book.
There you go. And then I know that for some for some writers, when they're self-editing, they'll say if they're making a pass specifically for plot points or whatever it is, say it's characters. I'm getting a little feedback on my end. Especially in regards to characters, they'll say they'll either literally print it out or they will go in within Word and highlight the element that it is, the storytelling element. If it's characters, they'll assign each character different colors. And I've heard of that sort of thing, as a technique to make sure that everything is kosher, and nobody's in a place where somebody else is supposed to be, and elements and things like that, things of that nature.
Well, I don't do that, but I think that one thing that's helpful is to, well, I'll give a couple things here that I find helpful. Is one thing is to be aware that, every character in your story has a job, and,
Yeah. Hmm.
a mistake that, a lot of the beginning fiction writers make, and can be particularly apparent in short fiction as opposed to novels, although you're gonna get to those novels, is they'll have a bunch of characters who are doing the same job. There's the sounding board for the hero, for instance,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and,
I thought I knew where you were going.
and
Archetypes, maybe that sort of thing.
usually, particularly in short fiction, it's useful to consolidate those characters where you can, to combine them into, fewer guys, ideally one guy,
Sure.
and, otherwise it can just be kinda cluttered and confusing. Uh, God, what was the other thing I was gonna say? Uh, well, in terms of, like, plotting a finite series where, like, a trilogy of books where you know that the end they're gonna solve the problem. I've already touched on what to do with what how you kinda keep track of characters development. So sometimes you get lucky again, and you'll find that it breaks down naturally in 3 parts. Like, I wrote a trilogy of Forgotten Realms called The Year of Rogue Dragons, and, I looked at what I wanted to accomplish in that story, and the first thing is, get the characters together, decide, and they experience what's going on, and second thing is they figure out why it's going on, and, the third thing is that, okay, now we know why it's happening. Can we do something about it? We're going to try. And once I realized that the plot organized itself that way, it was very easy to say, okay, well, this is book one, this is book two, this is book three, and kind of pace myself. They can't always do that. More recently, I did a trilogy of books about Heimdall, the Norse god as Sentinel god, as depicted in Marvel Comics. So there are a couple of things about that trilogy that were challenging. I had to figure out. I wanted to do real Norse mythology, but I had to kind of filter it through the lens of Marvel Comics and meld the two. So I said, "Well, how am I going to do that?" And then we had to,
That had to be a tricky thing to
yeah.
do, by the way.
I was satisfied with the way it worked out, but it
Right.
was a little tricky. And then I had, with Heimdall, I knew I wanted to start out as this kind of callow young warrior of Asgard, just kind of another guy in the company, right? And evolve him to where he acquired his particular superpowers, abilities, godlike abilities, and became a god, and was assigned his role as the sentinel of the Rainbow Bridge. And so again, I had to figure out, well, how much of that happens in book one, how much happens in book two, how much
Hmm.
happens in book three,
Hmm.
and not rush it, but not unreasonably delay it either. It had to be a steady progression.
Yeah, I would imagine, that was a very, very interesting experience doing that, and working with Marvel and all of that.
Yeah,
Um,
it was very interesting. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity. It can get doing projects like that can get frustrating because normally what's happened is that it's licensed through the comic book company, or whoever, in this case Marvel, will license it to a, book publisher, and then the book publisher will contract with you. So what that means is that where normally when you do a project, you gotta get the, approval of your editor at the publisher for whatever you do. When you do a project like that, you gotta do 2 things, because it'll go to your editor at the book publisher, and you'll do whatever rewriting you need to do to satisfy him, and then it'll go on to Marvel, and then you get a whole different set of notes where it say, "Well, we want this change." So you've gotta do, kind of double edits to, editorial demand, where normally you have to do one set edits to editorial demand. But that I got fairly lucky. They didn't. There wasn't. I don't remember any huge contradictions or any like your editor,
Right.
the publisher got it. You know, got these couple points, but we have a whole bunch more stuff that we want you to do to make it a satisfactory to Marvel.
Yeah, I believe it. And and you know, so I imagine that because you have had those experiences with multiple series, that over time you just got to know obviously the characters, but again, how the stories are structured. And so you mentioned earlier about, you can play with certain elements, but especially because of the intellectual properties you were using, they had to go back to at least being the characters that everybody knows. But but in terms of any property, um, there is a character arc, but there's always an element of who they started with. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? You know,
Well, I do think that there's a distinction that you have to make between a finite series and a an open-ended series. Like there are a lot of a lot of private eye stories, detective stories are open-ended. You go through adventure after adventure after adventure, case after case after case, and the character is always going to come back more or less to being who he was at the start,
right.
or never changed in
Yeah.
the first place. I wrote a series of about a character named Selden, who was a fencing master in a town that's a lot like the town in Romeo and Juliet, with like feuding noble houses, except that we have sorcery there. And I knew that I was writing an open ended series, and he was never going to put down his sword or say I'm not taking any more jobs, or whatever. That was that's never the case. I haven't written about him in a long time, but if I ever go back to him, he'll be the same guy, and he'll continue to be the same guy. On the other hand, like I said, you can do a series where you know where you're going, like my Year of Rogue Dragons. Like there were characters in that who were not going to be the same as they were coming out as they went in, and you wrote to that, and you pace the character development, make sure you attend to it, so that the big normally they have like a big moment of realization at the end, or they often do, and it's like it's credible if they have that, because they've kind of been going through experiences which support that without really thinking about all the implications, and at the end it's like oh well, now I see that now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and and all of the things that we were talking about earlier, as far as as those elements of the essential elements of stories, is um, if you are if an author is okay, they're a little newer, and or they're um, um, going to be self-published, and they're going to be working, they're going to be hiring an editor, um, and say um, excuse me, they don't know what they need, although they do know that they do have issues with, say, continuity and things of that nature. What would you say to this type of author um, about self-editing, and as it relates to before you start sending out anything? Um,
Well, I think that, well, yeah, I think that, that's, I'm probably not the most qualified person to answer that since I've had really no success at self-publishing. All my success has been to selling to
You're right.
traditional
But
goods.
anyway, a lot of these things can
But,
apply
uh, but
to
that
each end of
said,
the spectrum here.
yeah, but that said, I mean, I think that, you probably have your beta readers who go over stuff for free before you hire somebody, right? So you take
Mhm.
into all the comments into account first. And one of the comments I heard about a writing group a long time ago was that, if a bunch of your beta readers are having the same problem, you should probably take heed of that. If they're telling you how to fix
Mhm.
it, that's more problematic, but you probably need to fix it somehow. So if I was like a beginning writer or aiming towards self-publishing or traditional publishing for that matter, and I had a bunch of beta readers, I would pay attention to what they consistently said was an issue for them, although not necessarily how to fix it. Then if you're going to go and hire a professional editor at some point, you need to, I think, before you agree to part with your money, you need to know what you're getting, and you need to maybe look at that person's credentials in terms of, they edit for X, Y, and Z, and these people, are published and making money. And so I think that you need to be careful about picking the editor that you have, and then once you
Mhm.
find somebody that's providing what you think you need at a fair price and they seem to be doing it successfully, then you probably need to pay attention to what they're doing. One mistake that a lot of people make is that they will show their work to an editor or beta readers or somebody, and they'll get all defensive if people don't just lavish praise on what they wrote, and suggest changes, and that's if you have that attitude, that it's pointless. I mean,
I've
my
experienced this in critique meetings
attitude
myself.
yeah, my attitude has always been that, that
Why?
you write it the best you can, you send it to the editor, 'cause I mean, because 'cause I'm just sort of, I guess I'm antisocial enough or whatever that or arrogant enough that I feel like the beta readers and the editor that you hire yourself, they don't really, don't really help my creative process that much. I would rather just send it off to the professional editor and assuming that the work is acceptable in the first place, the professional editor tells me what needs to change, and I do that, and we're done. But I know that a lot of people feel that the intermediate steps that I don't take are very valuable, and it may be that just, I'm I started back in the '80s, so I'm really kind of from the, when dinosaurs walked the earth kind of publishing, and I don't, I don't know a lot about self-publishing and what people have to do, what people do these days to make it, and, I never really made it big in the first place. I always got by, and, and now, I'm kind of old and semi-retired, so it's like I
You know,
feel like I
yeah,
need to learn.
but you in definitely in terms of writing, you have been very successful because you've successfully published
Yeah.
at least a few, off the top of my head, series, um, you know, that are connected, like we said earlier, to these intellectual properties that are well known, and I'm
Yeah,
sure that helped immensely in your sales.
I've written a lot of, stuff over the past several decades, really, at this point, and, except for, like a couple years here and there, have always managed to support myself with writing, so I would consider myself a modest success. I'm definitely not Stephen King.
Well, that's like the the 10%, right? Or whatever that is. The Stephen Kings and the, Patterson and all of those guys. But yeah, I can completely. I mean, I I confer with a lot of the things you said about all of that. Uh, just have people read your work, even if you are going to submit to an agent or a publisher. Um, obviously, you really need to have other folks read it first.
Yeah, there's a few caveats, I think, that for writers groups or beta readers or whatever that is. The first one is you don't want people who are just automatically going to say everything you write is great, because that won't help you, and you don't want people who are going
Right.
to trash what you wrote, and say it's terrible,
Mm-hmm.
even when it's good, because that's not going to be helpful to you either. And kind of as a corollary to that, you don't want readers who don't appreciate the genre that you're working in or the kind of stuff that you're writing. If you are writing romance, let's say for example, and you have a bunch of beta readers who hate romance, all romance on principle, they're not going to appreciate what you write even when it's good and effective, and that's not going to be helpful to you. So you got to if you're going to have that kind of posse that you consult about your work, you need to choose them fairly carefully, I think. And I
Agreed.
also and I also think, like, if you're a arrogant SOB like me, that and you don't find that those people helpful, it's all right. Even now, I think it's all right not to have them. To just have you and maybe the professional editor, or if you're self-publishing, maybe not even that. But I mean, you can put your stuff out there without them, and that may be the right choice for you. If certainly if you can't take criticism, that's possibly the only choice for you.
Yeah. So let's see. Do you have any other points regarding all of this that come to mind before we wrap everything up?
No, I think that I've basically covered it. Like I said, I'm kind of a keep it in your head and skulk in your room alone kind of dinosaur of a writer. So it's like, but I hope I've said some useful things.
Gee, I don't do that at all. I tend to, but anyway. And then, so the other thing that I wanted to wrap it up. One thing I wanted to ask you, and I've been asking all of my guests this this year. Um, so you and I and all my guests are all word lovers. Do you have a favorite word or turn of phrase that is common? It is, or that is currently prominent in our genres of publishing, or
Like
even fandom? Because why not?
a word or a turn of phrase.
Mm-hmm. That you just love to see in speculative fiction.
Um, Not particularly. I could tell you a couple writers that I like. I
Sure,
mean, if
why not?
like I'm currently reading the Rivers of London series, which is an urban fantasy series by Ben Aronovich, which is I was very different than the American American urban fantasy stuff I read, which tends to very much stem from the kind of hard boiled private eye Raymond Chandler sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His
Mm-hmm.
stuff is he's a Londoner, and his stuff is all about the wizards who were on the London police force dealing with supernatural goings on and stuff, and it and so they feel very different, and to me very kind of fresh. So I really like his stuff. A couple writers that I like who are doing horror that I really like, that I particularly enjoy, are John Langan and Paul Tremblay. I just saw that Paul Tremblay has a new book out, so I'm going to have to get that sometime in the near future. So that's a couple writers that I like. I can't think of a particular words.
That's fine. That works. That works really well, actually. And then we can wrap things up by saying, where can we find you? And I will get any links that you mentioned. I will pop in the show notes and elsewhere that this will go to.
Well, like I said, the Plague Knight is the big deal in my life right now, and the movie that's being made. But I don't know when it'll be out or on what platform it'll end up, so I can't really, I can't really,
That's so exciting, by the
you
way.
think, go get the Plague Knight. Well, you won't get it for at least another year. I don't think so. Um, but like I said, Battleborn magazine is the new Sword and Sorcery magazine. Starting in issue 3, I'll have a story which I hope is the first of a kind of an ongoing series that I'm going to write. And uh, the Basil and Mobius series is something that I contribute to regularly, and that we do just the for 2026 book just came out, and I just wrote my stories for the 2027 book,
Okay,
which and let's
nice.
see, I mentioned the Reprise anthology, which is where I'll be writing the story for later this year, which is all the kind of former Forgotten Realms novels who are coming back to write fantasy stories. And you can find all my stuff pretty much through Amazon. I always just say, look for me on Amazon, and you'll
There
find
you
all
go.
my stuff. A lot
Love
of
it.
it's out of
Love it.
print, but you can get it through the used bookstores and stuff.
Awesome. And I'm Heather Dewey Pettet. As I said before, I'm an author, editor, and artist. And I can be found via Substack and a lot of other places at Heather Dewey Pettet Edits. And so I guess we can just round things out by saying goodbye. And oh yeah, before we say, pardon me, before we say goodbye, upcoming events that you and I will. There's definitely one that I know of that you and I will both be at this fall, and that is Necronomicon Tampa.
Okay, well, I will be at the Ocoee, hope I'm saying that right, um, gaming and gaming convention this coming Sunday, July the 19th, and I'll probably have some books there to sell if anybody wants to pick up something I wrote. And anyway, I hope people who are in the Orlando area at least will come out and say hi. Then I will be at Gen Con, which is like July 29th through August 2nd up in Indianapolis. I'll be
Nice.
at Dragon Con, which is Labor Day weekend, September
Mm-hmm.
3rd through September 7th. And then, like you said, you and I will both be at Necronomicon, which is
Mm-hmm.
September 27th to 29th. And I know that because I just made my hotel reservation.
And I know that because I'm uh, uh, transparency warning here. I'm on the staff. I'm on a PR and marketing team. So yes, it is definitely the last weekend of September, as at the Embassy Suites. Yes, at USF, the main campus there in Temple Terrace, and yeah, sounds like we might even be on a panel together. Uh,
I'll be grill. I like that.
the editing one.
Okay. The people who want to find out more about the convention, get their membership, make their hotel reservation, all that good stuff, can go to necrofl.org, and all the information and the links and stuff are there.
Thank you for saying that, because I don't have to. All right. Well, thank you very much, Richard, for coming. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
And
I will see you soon, I hope.
absolutely, I'll see you in September. And thank you everyone for watching and or listening. I really appreciate it. Likes, follows, and all the things are very helpful to get get this podcast off the ground. I really appreciate it. And all right, well, thanks for everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye. Bye.